2022, a year where honestly, not much happened. I mean, we've just been pulling off from the pandemic, so I guess that's something, but for me, one thing I'll remember is the killer games I played this year. So akin to last year, I decided to rank every game that I beat in 2022. Some things to say before we jump in. There are some spoilers for games on the list, so if you intend to play them, which you should, just be a little warned. I'm also not including DLCs when considering games placement, and I'm not counting super short games like Alpaca Stacker or oh my god look at that knife. Although, if you want to see a playthrough, you can just check out mine. Anyways, I feel like I should mention that I do not consider any of these games bad, and just because it's low on the list, just means the other games I've found were better. And after all, this is my own opinion. One last thing to mention is I put a ton of work into this video, so the least you could do is support me, whether that be liking, subscribing, or just watching the video to the end. Anyways, let's get right into the list. Kicking off our list is a little indie game named Felix the Reaper, which is a puzzle game where you freeze time and move certain objects to certain places in order to kill your target when the time unfreezes. Along with that, you can rotate the sun, but you must stay within the shadow. The game touts itself as proudly featuring Sir Patrick Stewart himself, yet he only briefly narrates the start and the end. So it tries to go for a comedy feel, but it doesn't quite hit it right, and I think it would have been better as a comedy game if Patrick Stewart was more prominent. Now, the music was pretty good, and the puzzles were sometimes way too hard or way too easy, with no distinct difficulty curve, and most of the time just felt really tedious. Overall, it was an alright puzzle game that definitely had some faults, but it was cool to get through and see how your actions could lead to something bigger. Going from the first game to this one is a feeling I can only compare to playing a Game Boy Color for the first time. Or no, scratch that, a Game Boy Advance SP. Because anyone who's ever played a Game Boy Color knows that you cannot see anything on that screen. While the previous one lacks colors, this one uses them greatly and it just makes everything pop. This game almost feels like a second half to the first, because it just continues from where the last one ends, and the difficulty also begins where the last one ended. So the game gets very hard by the end. So this time, the game is not just restricted to the Wild West setting, and my boy Clive goes all around the world. This game, mostly at a tough but fair difficulty, except in the flying levels which can eat my shoe, paired with good boss fights, and made a great short platform with a good amount of difficulty. I can only imagine the board meeting for this game. Sir, we want to make a platformer. Sure, what's it about? Well, I want to have cavemen, house kind of like Donkey Kong Country, and dinosaurs and jetpacks, and aliens. Okay, what? Don't ask me how he already knows how to use one, just automatically, but whatever. Now, Jet Cave Adventure, despite what the name suggests, is not some shovelware that you would just find on the Wii or something. It's an actual game, and it's a pretty solid platformer where you're aided by a jetpack. But I found the jetpack made some things a little too easy. What was not too easy was the auto-run hang glider and jetpack flying levels, which made the controls so loose, I thought my controller was going to melt in my hands. Another time the controls were not up to par is when they took away the jetpack. This ain't no Super Mario Sunshine Cool Challenge level, this is a clunky mess. Main levels and bosses were also designed well enough, but not too differentiable from each other. I honestly don't have much to say about this game, it's just your run-of-the-mill Kirby game. You know, it has some cute Nintendo charm, but it doesn't really do much to stand out. When I played this one with a friend, however, so it definitely cranked up the enjoyability factor, but it also felt kind of slow. The at-home buddies were cool, and the bosses were frustrating to a point where I discovered I just get infinite health by eating my friend and then spitting them back out, which let me cheat my way through the rest of the game. I also don't know much to say about this game, but it does run in 3D, which added a lot to the charm, and while it was still technically 2D, you felt like you were moving through the environments a lot more. The levels once again were solid, but felt just good enough. Finding copy abilities was cool though, and trying to find out which combinations worked and which ones the Nintendo developers just somehow pulled out of their brain was quite fun actually. Now boss fights were easy except for the last one where I jumped around for 5 minutes before I actually knew what to do. And overall it was another great game, but I just find Kirby games are difficult to differentiate from each other. The cultural significance that Portal left on the world was insane. I mean, I wouldn't really know. I was one. But as a game included in a pack and just kind of there as a filler, it is actually insane. The only reason I didn't like it better is just because I had played the second one before and this one felt more like a demo because of that. Plus, if you really want to know, you could check out my playthrough of it. Anyways, it was pretty good and you could not deny its significance. The puzzles were imaginative and GLaDOS was great to listen to throughout the way. So what happens when you mash together Mario, Zelda, and Hollow Knight? Well, you get an abomination. But you can also get Blue Fire. We will talk about Hollow Knight a little later, but Blue Fire is strikingly similar. It's just in 3D. And one thing I found so good about Hollow Knight, however, that Blue Fire lacked, is that the world felt previously lived in and occupied, where Blue Fire just felt empty. The combat was okay, and it was really cool to have a small platforming challenge in between gameplay. My favorite part was the dungeons, but there were only a couple of them, and the majority of the bosses weren't actually that great. The game was pretty fun to get through, and it was tough but satisfying. The only thing that really stops it from getting higher is how broken it was. I had to restart my playthrough 3 times, and in the end I couldn't even beat the final boss because it would always crash right before I beat them. I would recommend this game, and it has some good potential, but definitely not the PC version. Nothing like taking some random guy who thinks he's a Ford F-150 and completely erasing his personality to fix him. Now this is a game which draws a suspiciously big amount of inspiration from Papers, Please, but still manages to be an incredibly creative puzzle game. It features an amazing soundtrack and imaginative characters whose personalities are just crazy and out there, but it works so well and they're very interesting with a lot of character development and they're very three-dimensional. The gameplay features you multitasking between fixing someone's mind, making sure they do not get too stressed, and the amount of money and time that you have. And depending on the ending you want, making sure to not wipe their personality. It hits the right amount of difficulty and challenges you morally with a slew of different endings. And although it might seem a little too close to its predecessor, it's an experience that everyone should try. So Ubisoft, I just have one question to ask you. What happened? Assassin's Creed Rogue is basically a sequel to a game that may or may not appear much further down the list. And it's pretty much the same game but with a new coat of paint, which looks absolutely beautiful by the way. But it lacks what the original game excelled in, which was characters and storytelling. Assassin's Creed Rogue was not a bad game, but I think it was not as good as it could have been. Playing as the enemy is a great concept, and it could have been a very emotional journey for the player if they spend lots of time and attachment to the characters on the assassin side, and then you get really depressed when you have to kill them, but the game doesn't really do that. Now it's a short game, and I think they could have spent a couple more hours bonding with the characters that you eventually face in the beginning. The game doesn't really make you feel like a Templar, but an assassin in a Templar costume. And the worst part in my opinion was replacing the super exciting assassin missions with these tower defense ones. No one likes them. The game was pretty and the gameplay is fun enough, but its potential is not reached whatsoever. Everyone should play this game, but I guarantee you have probably never heard of it. Playing it almost felt like I was on a trip. It was so unique and I've never played anything that had the same vibe. The game features you plopped into a place made by this lad who tries to make everyone artificially happy, yet you as a player do things on your own to make them happy by doing them favors. The whole time though, it is very unsettling and surreal, and throughout there are very light horror elements. Nothing that'll give you nightmares for years, but something that'll definitely give you that weird feeling in your chest, you know the one. All the characters that help you are three-dimensional and interesting. Kinda similar to Mind Scanners. The environments in this game too, along with the music that I can't stop hearing in my head, make everything just feel like a dream. Last year, I played Super Paper Mario, and I actually ranked it last, which I'm sure will anger lots of people. But I know that it's almost nothing like previous games in the series, so I decided to try the original Paper Mario, and I am more than happy that I did. Paper Mario is amazingly charming, and while it is a bit easy, it stays fun because of the characters in the world. Turn-based RPG battles are usually kind of boring for me, so that's why I'm attracted to games like Undertale because they make turn-based battle fun. And Paper Mario does that by incorporating timings into your attacks to keep you on your toes. The graphics actually look amazing for a 64 game, and I feel like it won't age. Crazy for how old it is. The humor is great too, and I really love that Nintendo feel. Borderlands 3 is a looter shooter, whatever that means, which is best enjoyed with friends. I played this game with my 2 other friends and it was probably the most fun I've ever had this year with games, which definitely bumped this one up way higher than it would be if I played on my own. You know, I wonder if my friends would think the same. So you remember when we played Borderlands together?
Yeah, you were.
So how was I when we were like playing?
Bro, like, you couldn't hit the boss if it was the size of the map. You would like be turning around doing 360s and you would hit nothing but the ground.
You kind of got carried the entire time. Like, You were like, okay, you were always complaining about like not having ammo. You never actually killed anyone.
If we let you drive, we'd start on one planet and end up on another. Like, we had the simplest destinations. Like, you could see where we're going and you'd find a way to go in the opposite direction.
Yeah, but the worst part though is when you were driving, or when we let you drive in your vehicle. Oh, like you couldn't drive to save your life. If it was a mission vehicle, like one of the ones used for a mission, like we'd have to backtrack because you'd exploded so often.
You had 0, and I mean 0 kills, like on the simplest of monsters. Like, you got carried.
Well, that's a disappointment. Aside from that, even though I've not played any of the other games, I could tell the story was weak, and I attribute that to the villains who are just trying to appeal to the fellow kids. The game played nice, except for when you were driving. My controls turned into spaghetti because I can't move the camera around to see where I was going without driving off a cliff. Either way, Borderlands 3 was super fun, and I recommend it to a bunch of friends to get it and play with each other like how I did. In the 27th Tomb Raider reboot, Lara Croft ventures into uncharted territory. All jokes aside though, Tomb Raider is actually a pretty good game that wasn't just an Uncharted clone. The game that you explore is actually really interesting, and a lot of times you feel like you are just watching a straight up movie. The game's environments are also just visually stunning, which is crazy considering it's almost 10 years old. One problem I did have for a game called Tomb Raider is there is not a lot of Tomb Raider, and any in-game puzzles were immediately spoiled by Lara or other characters straight up saying the solution, which was really annoying. And a little spoiler ahead, so click off if you don't want to hear it, but everyone dies. It's like Rogue One up here. Is the story predictable? Yes. Are the puzzles too easy? Yes, but it's still an amazing game. If there's one thing you have to give to Assassin's Creed, it's the ability to replicate a time period and city so well, you really feel like you're there. I love London, so it's really cool in this game to see what landmarks used to look like and how they have changed, along with how London was back then. The graphics and shader work here are amazing, as the game is filled with hazy skies reminiscent of the industrial era. Every time you start a mission, it flashes to the Big Ben and goes bing. You know, just in case you forgot where the game takes place. I did like the Twin Assassins thing, and it was always funny that Evie's missions were only ones where you had to fix Jacob's mistakes. One thing I did find though is there was not a lot to do when you unlock new parts of the map. And the collectibles really sucked, to the point where I couldn't find a single cool one. I don't know if this is just because it was my third Assassin's Creed game this year, but I was getting a little tired of these open worlds with just a bunch of filler and not really many interesting things to do, but the game was pretty good. I have played a lot of 3D platformers, but I've never actually played a collectathon, except for Mario Odyssey. I find them a bit daunting with the amount of things to get, so I originally handed it into this game with the mindset of not completing it. But when I dropped into the first level, it just clicked in my brain that it's the best way for the game to be played. Sure, there is a lot to do, but it never felt overwhelming. To start with, the gameplay was very solid, and the entire personality of the game felt like I was just playing on cartoon. A couple of things didn't age well. For instance, music notes wouldn't remain collected when you died or left a level, and the camera was really a part of its time. Regardless, all the levels were interesting and diverse, creating a great experience, with a timeless soundtrack and great characters. Donkey Kong Country Returns is actually a game I've had for a while. I got it when I was about 8 for Christmas and tried to play, but it was too hard for my little child brain. Coming back to it, I can see why. This is no Super Mario Bros. Wii, it is on, like Donkey Kong. Honestly, some of the levels were bananas, and it would even hit Kaizo at some point, especially since I was going for all the gems. One level type that was extremely difficult were the rocket barrel runs, which were lightning fast reflexes. The game actually looks really nice for a Wii game, and every level was memorable and with its own gimmick to come with it. The game will remain in my mind for a while, with some levels going to haunt me in my sleep for the rest of my life. But for the most part, it was really fun. Talking about fun, let's look at a game that was nothing but pure fun. Sunset Overdrive was all about movement in open world and how to make it fun, which is an issue with a lot of open worlds face. The game was made by Insomniac, so it is very easy to see the game that inspired, which is Spider-Man. One really nice thing was the amount of character customization and outfits. Some people have complained that the game is cringy, sometimes jokes do not hit, but I never found it too annoying. The quest missions seem repetitive. Go here, collect this or kill monsters, get reward. but always felt fresh and interesting. Basically, in the game you follow a character in an apocalypse where an energy drink company makes a drink that turns the world into zombies. Now the story was alright, but in the end I was left wondering what we accomplished. We did not leave the city as the primary objective, we did not even obliterate all the zombies. We did stop the city from exploding, but aside from that the story abruptly ends.
Lowlands away!
In this game, you get to do what you want, because a pirate is free. You are a pirate.
Yar-har, fiddled indeed. Being a pirate is a right to be. Do what you want, cause a pirate is free. You are a pirate.
This game differs a ton from other AC games, which I think helped it a lot because the world is insanely huge. I also felt like being the first game in the series that I played helped me a ton, as I was not used to the mechanics yet, so they're not stale. But I don't think that was the only reason. The world is vast with many things to do, and side missions were very fun. But the star of the show was the story, with an insane twist at the end and engaging throughout. Edward Kenway was a great protagonist, and the little songs that the crewmates sing while sailing the Caribbean seas was really complimenting the pirate lifestyle. One problem I did find with the open world is that there was lots of copy and pasting of islands, but what do you expect from a world like this one? As an entry to the franchise, it was a hell of a game, and I feel like my experience with an AC game will never be matched again. Now, I will admit, when I first played this game I heavily disliked it. The fact of the wonky controls and no fast travel and other modern aspects initially turned me off. But once I started going, it all just clicked. Sure, the controls are one of a kind and kind of uncomfy, but I think it pushes the immersion of the game further. Speaking of immersion, I would say that is the biggest thing that this game excels in. Water droplets on Samus's helmet are hitting her eyes when the screen flashes bright, let alone the environments. All bosses were difficult but insanely rewarding, especially the final one. The game perfects backtracking to a point where it never feels too tedious and always fresh. Levels are fun and exciting, and everything comes together to form a first-person shooter like no other. Except maybe the sequels. I also feel like it's worth mentioning that a remake just came out. It was actually just announced, so now the game is way easier to get and is way more accessible.
Well, beyond the sea, somewhere.
Up on the shore, they work all day. Out in the sun, they slave away, while we devoted full time to floating under the sea. I feel like that line perfectly describes the city of Rapture in BioShock. Just like the last game, it's a first-person shooter that relies heavily on story and immersion. And out of those two, it excels a bit better than Metroid. The game touches horror a little bit, but it mostly just felt unsettling. But exploring the underwater city is an experience second to none. BioShock crafted its environments in a 60s type aesthetic, and it works really well. Plus, the game is fun. Altering your DNA with plasmids and finding different ways to defeat enemies was really cool. One thing that will haunt me is the Big Daddy sound. If I hear it in real life, I will get intense war flashbacks and probably have a heart attack. Everything in this package is intriguing and everyone should play it. Just don't let the twist get spoiled for you. I feel like the game did get weak after you met Andrew Ryan, but before the last couple hours, everything is engaging and I promise you will not be able to put it down. What can I say about this game that has not already been said? Hollow Knight is fantastic. Every year has to have a breakout indie game for me. With last year's Celeste, I was happily waiting to play this one, and what a treat. You notice the past two games play heavily on world building, and this one is no different. It follows suit in BioShock with a world that was once inhabited, but then fell into decay. The game drops you into the world without really telling you what to do or where to go. It kind of poses a double-edged sword. On one end, it's cool to go where you want to go, without anyone telling you what to do, yet at the same time it's tough, because you will just run around aimlessly waiting for something to happen. One thing the game does extremely well is bosses. They sometimes made the game feel like a 2D Dark Souls, where you repeat the same boss over and over again. But when you eventually beat them, the feeling is actually legendary. Playing the game, I barely scratched the surface on lore, but from what I gathered, it is very deep. The combat is tight and the exploration is addicting. It's probably one of the best Metroidvanias ever. I would recommend this to anyone, but beware of the difficulty. This game is stupid hard. Lava Live. This was the only game I actually played this year that came out this year, so I had no perceived notions before I played it. While it's a remake, the original game isn't insanely well known here in the Wild West, but damn, if it was localized when it came out, I believe it would be held at the same threshold that Earthbound is today. The game follows a bunch of different timelines and different playstyles, which range from me, my monkey, to oh my god, what is on his tongue? I don't want to spell too much, but all the stories are tied together at the end by the fact that all the bosses are a reincarnation, which is really cool an idea. The graphics in this remake were beautiful, and so was the music. I just can't get it out of my head. I think the game is deserving of a #1 spot this year, because it's so different from the other games and really paves its own path. Sure, some stories are better than others, but then being short keeps the game fresh and always engaging. Even now it's still underlooked and it should be on everyone's playlist. My favorite chapters had to be the finale, Imperial China, and the near future. One thing I would have added is a hard difficulty where you did not know enemy weaknesses, there was no map, and attacks had cooldowns, because it made the game a bit easy at times overall when I could just, knock enemies around with the same attack over and over again. Anyways, it was very solid, it was actually amazing, and should be given a try by everyone. So that was my ranking of every game I beat in 2022. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for sticking till the end. If you agreed or didn't agree with my picks, tell me in the comment section. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for future videos, including one just like this next year. And if you have some extra time on your hands, give last year's ranking a watch too. Anyways, I'll see you all very soon. Goodbye.